me set the scene for you. So think back, try to remember what it was like in Europe at the turn of the century. Things were not good, especially for Jews. There were pogroms, revolutions, draft, all kinds of things going on in Russia and Eastern Europe. And if there's one thing this group of people knew was that they had to get out. They had to leave. Where could they go? They could go to the United States, or they could go to Argentina. Argentina stepped into a wonderful situation because while the Tsar was trying to get rid of the Jews, actually Argentina was trying to find some people to move into the Pampas, those wonderful grasslands, because they had just removed the people who had been living there, so they had a vacancy in the Pampas that they were anxious to fill. Enter Baron Maurice de Hirsch, a Bavarian Jew who had a plan. His plan was to do whatever he could to save Russian Jewry. And he did it by talking with Argentina and saying, hey, I'd like to buy thousands of your acres out there, these Pampas. Great, send us your money and you can have them. So he bought the acreage and installed thousands of Russian Jews in Entre Rios, which is a very rural part of Argentina, north of Buenos Aires. This group of people became known as Gauchos Judíos, Jewish cowboys. They were mostly urban types, you know, they were a little uncomfortable when they got there, but it was better than Russia. Now, 1898 is when all this was going on. That just happens to be the time that the first written down tango was coming about, and the name of that tango was El Entrerriano. It was about gauchos, cowboys, moving to the city from Entrerrianos. These guys came into the city, and you're going to hear the story of what happens when we play this tango, which we thought was just such a wonderful narrative that we actually put it on our last CD, Tango Lovers. In this piece, you will be introduced to the guy from Entrerriano who is moving to the city, played by the cello. He's introduced, and he's kind of getting the swing of things when all of a sudden he picks up a swagger. Hey, he's in the big city. This is going to be fun. So he's swaggering down the street, when all of a sudden he sees a big city woman. Well, knocks him off his feet. He's swooning. You will hear the swoons. She ignores him, so he has to pick himself up and keep walking until he runs into another woman later on. And so goes the story of the Gauchos Judíos, and El Entrerriano. group that we're hearing about is the Rubinstein family. Now they came to Argentina from Bessarabia, Moldova, and the Ukraine. They arrived around 1905, and they had 7 children when they arrived, and they hadn't been there long, and they had 10 children. He was a shoemaker, she was a seamstress, and 3 of their 10 children ended up devoting their lives to tango and becoming very important people in the tango community. Luis was the most successful. Luis, when he was in the 3rd grade, was kicked out of school for writing poetry during class. He never went back to school, but he never stopped writing poetry. He actually started hanging out at tango clubs. He'd take his paper and his pencil and he'd sit down at the club and he'd write. And these poems became the lyrics, beautiful lyrics for tango songs. He was also the person who started some businesses that helped tango. One of the great things that the Jewish immigrants did in Buenos Aires was they started organizations that helped support the tango. In this case, he started an organization that was called the Academic Interpretation Society. And this group was supposed to prepare people to appear on radio, maybe talk about tango or sing tango. He also then started one that did the same for film, how to be an extra in a tango film. Very enterprising. He was also writing articles for magazines that his fellow immigrants of his age, maybe also kicked out of school, we don't know, also writing these articles, and they were appearing in magazines about tango. So there was going on right here, before there was such a thing as an MBA in Buenos Aires, there was a little networking and marketing going on in the community that was of great help to tango. Now, one thing that he did that put him on the map for tango was write the lyrics to a great piece called Inspiración. This piece had been written years before he found it. It was in a dustbin. Nobody ever played it. Inspiración, nobody was even sure who wrote it. Peregrino Palos, they didn't know who that was. But he found this piece, and somebody said to him, "Luis, I dare you. I dare you to write lyrics to this piece. This is the most unsingable piece I have ever heard." Well, not one to pass a dare by, he took up the pen and he wrote a beautiful set of lyrics that put Inspiración back on the map. We put this piece on our Tango Lovers CD, and it's a beautiful arrangement that was done for us by the great tango violinist Mauricio Marcelli. to introduce you to the two remaining members of our cast this evening. We are so thrilled to have with us Mariela and Jeremias, who are coming from Miami, where their immigrant dream is coming true every day, stronger and stronger. They are going to dance for you an improvisational tango. Now, you know, in tango, there's a leader and a follower, and you're going to see the magic that happens as they try to figure out what they're doing in this just a flick of a moment. So you know, I love the violin, and so much of tango has a lot to do with the violin. In our next piece, the violin, gypsy cadenzas, and music of tango all come together with the film. And this happened because in Copenhagen in 1925, there was a Jewish violinist who was an orchestra leader in a silent film theater. Silent films, you all are too young to remember this, but they were a very big deal, and they employed thousands of musicians all over the world. This man, Jacob Gefa, wrote a piece one night for his orchestra in the silent film theater. That piece was an instant success and spread rapidly all over Europe. And as soon as talkies came in, it was in over 100 films in less than 2 years. It was the hit of the decade, maybe of the century. It's a piece you all know from 1925, Jalousie, or Celos. So those Europeans threw the gypsy tango right into the film music, and it was such a hit that when they heard it down in Buenos Aires, they said, sounds like something we should be doing. So, Julio De Caro, who was the great innovator who actually invented the orchestra that we now think of as the tango orchestra, 2 violins, 2 bandoneons, bass and piano, he was also a violinist, and he had an arranger who worked with him, and he decided that maybe he would write some very virtuoso violin parts in his next piece. He just happened to have a brilliant Eastern European violinist in his orchestra. The name was Raoul Kaplan. Raoul was one of those kids who came from Odessa with his parents. And his mother thought, oh, my son is going to be the next Jascha Heifetz of South America. Didn't happen. No, poor little Raoul, when he was 12, he went to an audition to play in a silent movie theater. He was only 12. He was wearing short pants. He was a head shorter than any kid in the line trying to try out for this. But when he got up, he played the socks off of his audition, and he got the part in front of all those older kids. His parents were a little disappointed. It wasn't quite the Jascha Heifetz experience they were expecting, but he, at age 12, was making twice what they brought home between them. So, with food on the table, the family said, thank you, Raoul, and that was how Raoul got his start in silent films. Now, you know, silent films died. And what happened to all those people that were playing in the pit in the silent films? It was a massive unemployment all over the world. And Raoul and many other violinists in Argentina were actually saved by the tango. They weren't unemployed. The good ones walked right across the street from the silent movie theater to the tango club, and they said, you know, need a violinist? Well, about that time, the tango was becoming respectable. It started out quite disreputable. But it was becoming respectable, moving into nicer clubs. They, you know, had white tablecloths, and the guys were actually had to wear jackets. So things were looking up, and they needed arrangers to make more respectable music, and music that bigger orchestras could play. You know, if you have this many people in an orchestra, you can't just jam. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have parts written out. If you're a jazz group, of course you can do it, but everybody takes their own solo. But here we're playing chamber music all the time. So these arrangers weren't tethered to their fingers. They didn't have to play what they could play. They could imagine, oh, a beautiful arpeggio. Oh, it would be so wonderful for a high violin solo here. But the guys that had been playing couldn't do that because they'd never taken violin lessons, and they were self-taught. But along comes Raoul Kaplan. He changed the sound of the tango violin. He walked in, the arranger put a piece of very difficult music, the arranger thought, on the music stand, and Raoul went, and he whipped it off. You know, he'd had years of classical training, he had years of sight-reading music in a dim orchestra pit, so this was easy for him. So we know that Raoul Kaplan changed the sound of tango, and it was forever. What is our next piece? Oh, this is the reason I'm telling this story. I'm sorry, I got so carried away I lost my train of thought. The reason I'm telling you all this is because the first piece that this virtuoso violin appeared in was Tierra Querida, our next piece, and a piece which is also on our new CD, Tango Lovers. You can actually go on YouTube and put in Raoul Kaplan, Tierra Querida, and you will hear the solo that changed the sound of tango violin. You'll hear all this virtuoso stuff that he was doing. So we just wanted to share with you our version of Tierra Querida, with, of course, our virtuoso violinist, Eva Cappelletti-Chao. So, if you're familiar with tango, the tango world, you know the name Julio De Caro, you know the name Francisco Canaro, another violinist and tango band leader. You know the name Enrique Francini, a great violinist and tango band leader. But chances are, even if you know tango, you've never heard of Raoul Kaplan. Why was that? Because the Jewish immigrants in this world were accepted, they got along great, but they weren't the big dogs. The big dogs were the Italians, they were also the Spanish. But the important thing to remember is that it was Mario Abramovich who did the solo in Jalousie for Tango Argentino and put it on the map. It was Simon Bayur who created the gypsy sound in violin. He was from Poland and listened to gypsies all his life by the time he arrived there. And of course it was Raoul Kaplan who put the virtuoso sound into tango in Tierra Querida. I don't know if you've ever watched 20 Feet from Stardom about backup singers, but it's a little bit the same story. You know, they're the guys in the front who are wonderful and charismatic and can hold the group together, and then they're the people that are standing in the back row that actually are making it happen. And that's a lot of what was going on at that time. But without those great Jewish violinists from Russia and Poland, there would have been no cadenza that Enrique Francini could have written for our next piece. This is a piece that is so beautiful that we decided to end our CD, Tango Lovers, with this wonderful piece called Tema Otoñal, which means the theme of autumn. So here it is, a beautiful violin cadenza. And we're going to end this part of our program with a fabulous milonga written by Julian Plaza. Maestro Plaza himself gave it to me when I was first in Buenos Aires in the year 2000, and we're thrilled to have Mariela and Jeremias to dance it for you. It is called Nocturna. Were natural allies. Of course, you all remember Rudolph Valentino and his tango debut in Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and Carlos Gardel. Carlos Gardel and tango in film were a fantastic combination. In fact, Carlos Gardel made 20 films in something like 5 years, at the very end of his life. In fact, he was coming back from a film promotion tour when he perished in that flaming plane crash in Medellin, and the world lost such a great singer. But the film business and the recording business in Buenos Aires were actually boosted greatly by another Jewish immigrant, this one. His name was Max Glucksmann. And Max Glucksmann actually started out in photography, which was his entree into the film industry, but he quickly switched over to recording. And by the time he was 40 years old, he controlled the recording industry. He's the one who was making the tango records. He took on Victor Records and banished them. He was More than just a recording mogul, however, he had a social conscience, and he was the one who introduced the idea of royalties in Argentina. This is something that has saved the lives of many tango musicians, the fact that when they get old and their fingers aren't working so well anymore on the fiddle, they can collect royalties from their early recordings and it tides them over. So he's the one that did that. He did it both in the recording industry and in the film industry. We're going to play for you tonight one of our favorite tangos, which came from Carlos Gardel's final film, Tango Bar. It's a piece you all know from Scent of a Woman, or maybe from the opening scene of Schindler's List. It's called Por una Cabeza. that Zippy Milonga was written in Argentina in 1933. Meanwhile, across the ocean, in Poland, in 1933, things weren't looking quite so upbeat. You know, tango was so popular in Poland. It was, well, there were more tangos written in Poland in the 1930s than in Argentina. There was something about the dislocation, the heartbreak that spoke to the Polish soul, and they created these beautiful, beautiful tangos. Most of the people that wrote the popular music in those days in Poland, in Europe, and certainly in the United States were Jewish. We had Irving Berlin, we had Al Jolson, they had Arthur Gold and Mieczysław Fogg, and they had Jerzy Protaspersky, names that we don't know but were just as famous in that country as Irving Berlin and George Gershwin were in ours. Now, these composers were struggling to find a way to get their music out, and they often had to think of other ways to get their ideas across besides just to be a sad, sad song. So they would create a zippy, zippy milonga. We're going to play for you now a Polish piece that was written by Jerzy Protaspersky. It's a very, very sad piece to me. It's a piece that I fell in love with when I first heard it years ago. It was in the opening scene of the Russian film Burnt by the Sun. I don't know if you ever saw that. It was an Oscar-winning foreign film that year, I think 1995 or something. And it resurfaced in my life, and so I was thrilled to be able to put it on our last CD, Tango Lovers. It was in Schindler's List, it's been in a million different movies because it's such a beautiful song, and this particular arrangement was done for us by an Argentine living in New York, although we added our own little bits and pieces here and there. And it features our wonderful Polish cellist, Lukasz Szyrner. So here it is, Ta Ostatnia Niedziela, which is all about a couple breaking up and her pleading for one last Sunday before the world falls apart. So our next story, ironically, takes place in the Lower East Side of New York. This is about the influence in the tango of Jewish immigrants. So Astor Piazzolla is a big name in tango, and he moved to New York when he was 2 years old. He lived with his parents right next to the Lower East Side at 8 St. Mark's Place. He had many, many friends who were young Jewish immigrants. His next door neighbor was a Hungarian classical pianist who practiced Bartók and Bach 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Piazzolla said he used to sit with his ear next to the wall so that he could hear it. And in listening, he fell in love with Bach. He even talked his neighbor into teaching him his first lessons in Bach. He had a best friend from Poland, a little boy named Stanley, and the two of them were inseparable. They got in a lot of trouble. They used to dress up in their long dress coats and their slouch hats, and they would take the train, unbeknownst to their parents, up to Harlem, where they would hang out in clubs, posing as adults, and listening to Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington, and that's where Astor Piazzolla got his love of jazz. He also was the Shabbos Goy. He was the kid who went to the synagogue next to his house and for 25 cents would light the Sabbath candles. And he said, you know, I listened to this music so much that the rhythm, 3 + 3 + 2, stuck in my mind, and it's become a theme in my music. Now, I'm going to turn a little demonstration of 3. I don't know if that's a meaningful phrase to you or not, 3 + 3 + 2. If you're a musician, you know what it means, but if you're a listener, you might not. But you all know Jewish music probably, or many of you do, so I'm going to ask Jeffrey to do a little demonstration of what that rhythm is. So this rhythm, if you count 3 + 3 + 2 in Piazzolla's music, you will inevitably find it. It's going to show up in our first, we have 3 pieces that end this program. They're all by Astor Piazzolla, and they all are based on this rhythm, which he learned at the synagogue. So we're going to start with a beautiful piece which Jeffrey just played for you, the introduction to, called Oblivion, a piece he wrote as a film score in Italy. And we always love to meet our audience at the end of the show. So after we give a great big thanks to Dan Kirsch, who's been incredibly wonderful to us. Thank you, Dan, for having us. And thanks to Ken for making us look good with his beautiful, beautiful lights. Thank you, Ken. We're going to meet you. Well, actually, I remember now, I'm inviting you. We're going to have a little talk back here on the stage. So in case you have any questions about what went on tonight or what didn't go on tonight that you were curious about, we're just going to have a short 15-minute session right here. As soon as we put our fiddles away, we'll come back on stage and you can ask us anything you want to about this program. And after that, don't run away because we're going to meet you out in the lobby, because I am sure that some of you have wonderful immigrant stories that you could share with me. And I learned some of my best stories from the audience. So stick around and share them with me. Thank you very much. We're going to end our program with a piece that Astor Piazzolla wrote in Italy, a piece that he said would set the tango free. Libertango.